Imagine walking into a town where the fish and chip shop has stood in the same place for generations, where old fishing boats still rock gently in tiny harbors, where family-run cafes still serve tea the way they did half a century ago, and where the loudest sound isn't traffic. It's the cry of seagulls echoing across the sea. These aren't movie sets. They're real places hidden along Scotland's breathtaking coastline. While much of Britain has embraced glass buildings, chain stores, and modern developments, a handful of seaside towns have somehow escaped the rush of time. Here, Victorian promenades remain almost untouched. Traditional harbors still welcome local fishermen every morning. Colorful cottages continue to overlook the North Sea, and life moves at a pace that feels wonderfully familiar. Some locals even joke that these towns stopped changing sometime around the 1960s and simply forgot to start again. Today, we're counting down 10 Scottish seaside towns where stepping off the train feels like stepping into another era. Let's begin. Number 10, Stonehaven. Our journey starts in Stonehaven, a picturesque harbor town just south of Aberdeen. At first glance, it looks almost too perfect to be real. A crescent-shaped bay, a centuries-old harbor, rows of stone buildings weathered by North Sea winds. Everything here feels quietly timeless. Walk along the harbor in the early morning, and you'll notice something unusual. Many of the fishing boats still belong to local families whose ancestors worked these same waters generations ago. The routines haven't changed very much. Fishermen still prepare their nets before sunrise. Neighbors greet one another by name. Small independent cafes open their doors to regular customers who have been visiting for decades. Unlike many British coastal towns that replaced historic waterfronts with modern apartments, Stonehaven has protected much of its original character. Even the harbor itself looks remarkably similar to photographs taken more than 60 years ago. Above the town sits one of Scotland's most spectacular landmarks, Dunatar Castle. Perched dramatically on towering sea cliffs, the ruined fortress has watched over this coastline for centuries. Its presence adds another layer of history that makes Stonehaven feel even older than it already does. Spend an afternoon wandering the narrow streets, enjoying fresh seafood by the harbor, or simply watching waves crash against the sea wall, and it's easy to understand why visitors often say time seems to move differently here. Stonehaven doesn't try to recreate the past. It simply never felt the need to leave it behind. Number 9, Pittenweem. Next comes one of Scotland's hidden coastal treasures, Pittenweem. Located in the east nook of Fife, this tiny fishing village feels almost frozen in time. Its narrow, winding streets weave between whitewashed cottages and old stone houses that have barely changed in appearance for generations. The harbor remains the heart of the community. Unlike many picturesque villages that have become purely tourist destinations, Pittenweem is still a working fishing port. You'll often see creels stacked beside colorful boats, fishermen unloading their catch, and gulls circling overhead, hoping for an easy meal. Walking here feels wonderfully authentic. There are no giant shopping centers, no towering hotels, no rows of identical chain restaurants. Instead, you'll find family-run bakeries, tiny art galleries, independent cafes, and quiet pubs where conversations often last longer than the drinks. Many buildings date back hundreds of years, and their weathered stone walls tell stories of storms, trade, and generations of life beside the sea. Even during the busy summer months, Pittenweem somehow manages to keep its peaceful atmosphere. It's the kind of place where nobody seems to be in a hurry. Perhaps that's why so many visitors leave wishing they had stayed just one more day. Number 6, Crail. As we move further along Scotland's eastern coastline, we arrive at one of the country's most perfectly preserved fishing villages, Crail. At first glance, it feels as though someone pressed pause decades ago. The narrow cobbled streets wind gently downhill toward a tiny stone harbor that has welcomed fishing boats for centuries. Whitewashed cottages with bright red roofs overlook the sea, while colorful flower boxes decorate windows that have belonged to the same families for generations. Unlike many seaside towns that embraced modern development, Crail has carefully protected its historic character. There are no towering hotels dominating the skyline, no oversized shopping centers, no glass-fronted apartment blocks replacing old homes. Instead, you'll find independent bakeries, traditional tea rooms, local craft shops, and friendly cafes where visitors are greeted with genuine Scottish hospitality. The harbor remains the town's heart. Early each morning, fishing boats still return with fresh lobster and crab, continuing traditions that stretch back hundreds of years. It's not unusual to see locals gathering along the harbor wall, chatting about the weather, the day's catch, or stories passed down through generations. One of Crail's greatest charms is how naturally history blends into everyday life. Nothing feels staged. Nothing feels manufactured. The town isn't trying to look old. It's simply never stopped being itself. As waves gently lap against the harbor stones, it's easy to imagine standing here in 1965 and seeing almost exactly the same view. For visitors seeking authentic coastal Scotland, Crail offers something increasingly rare, a place where heritage isn't displayed in museums. It's simply part of everyday life. Number 5, now we travel to Scotland's dramatic west coast, where mountains meet the sea in one of the country's most unexpected villages. Welcome to Plockton. Unlike the rugged fishing ports of the North Sea, Plockton enjoys a remarkably sheltered location beside Loch Carron. The calm waters create reflections so perfect they almost resemble paintings. The waterfront is lined with pastel-colored cottages that have become one of Scotland's most photographed scenes. Even more surprising are the palm trees. Thanks to the warm waters of the Gulf Stream, these unusual trees thrive here, giving the village an atmosphere unlike anywhere else in Scotland. Yet despite this unexpected touch of the Mediterranean, Plockton remains deeply traditional. Fishing boats still rest quietly in the harbor. Small family businesses continue to serve both locals and visitors. Life moves slowly. People know one another. Conversations happen on benches overlooking the loch, rather than inside busy shopping malls. Modern developments have been kept to a minimum, allowing the village's original charm to survive. Many visitors arrive expecting to spend an hour exploring. Instead, they often stay much longer, drawn in by the peaceful rhythm of daily life. Television producers have long recognized Plockton's timeless beauty. Its scenery has appeared in numerous films and television dramas, where very little needed to be changed before filming. That's perhaps the greatest compliment any historic village can receive. It already looks like another era. As the evening sun casts golden light across the harbor, Plockton becomes less like a tourist destination and more like a memory brought to life. Number 4, Cromarty. Perched at the tip of the Black Isle lies one of Scotland's most elegant hidden treasures. Welcome to Cromarty. Unlike bustling seaside resorts, Cromarty has never tried to reinvent itself. Instead, it has quietly preserved the charm that made it special generations ago. Walking through the town feels remarkably peaceful. Tree-lined streets are bordered by beautifully preserved Georgian houses, many built during the 18th and 19th centuries. The architecture is so well preserved that film crews have occasionally chosen Cromarty as a ready-made historical backdrop. Little alteration is required. The town already tells its own story. Its harbor remains modest and welcoming. Fishing boats share the water with small sailing vessels, while seabirds drift overhead on the coastal breeze. Perhaps what makes Cromarty most special is its sense of community. Residents take enormous pride in preserving the town's history, restoring old buildings rather than replacing them, and celebrating local traditions that have survived for centuries. Visitors often describe Cromarty as feeling less like a tourist destination and more like a place where real life simply continues at its own unhurried pace. Standing along the waterfront, watching fishing boats gently rise and fall with the tide, it's easy to forget what year it is. The sounds, the buildings, the atmosphere, almost everything invites you to slow down. And in today's fast-moving world, that may be Cromarty's greatest treasure. From above, the village appears almost unreal. Rows of white cottages tumbled down the hillside toward a tiny harbor, creating one of the most picturesque coastal scenes in the country. The narrow streets are so steep that in many places, walking is easier than driving. Modern traffic never became part of Gardenstown's identity, and that's one of the reasons it has retained its remarkable charm. You won't find flashy entertainment complexes or busy shopping streets. Instead, you'll hear waves breaking against the harbor walls, seabirds circling overhead, and neighbors stopping to chat outside their front doors. Many of the cottages still feature traditional stone walls and slate roofs, preserving the village's historic appearance. As the tide rises and falls, the coastline reveals hidden rock pools and quiet coves that have changed little over the decades. Standing on the harbor at sunset, with the cliffs glowing in golden light, it's easy to understand why photographers and artists keep returning year after year. Gardenstown doesn't compete for attention. It simply rewards those who take the time to discover it. Number 2, Anstruther. Our runner-up is one of Scotland's most beloved fishing towns. Welcome to Anstruther. Located in the east nook of Fife, Anstruther has managed to preserve its maritime character while remaining a vibrant community. Its colorful harbor is filled with fishing boats that continue traditions stretching back centuries. Early each morning, local crews head out to sea, returning later with fresh seafood that supplies restaurants and fish markets throughout the region. Walking along the waterfront feels wonderfully nostalgic. Historic stone buildings line the harbor. Independent cafes serve homemade cakes and traditional Scottish bread. Small family businesses still dominate the main street instead of international chains. One of Anstruther's greatest attractions is its famous fish and chips. Visitors often queue for some of the freshest seafood in Scotland, prepared using recipes that have been passed down through generations. Yet despite its popularity, the town has resisted excessive modernization. The harbor remains authentic, the streets remain walkable, and the pace of life remains comfortably slow. Every corner tells a story of Scotland's deep connection to the sea. Fishing nets drying in the sun, weathered harbor walls, old warehouses transformed into museums and local businesses. Together, they create an atmosphere that feels remarkably unchanged since the middle of the 20th century. For many visitors, Anstruther captures everything they imagine when they think of a traditional Scottish fishing town. Number 1, Tobermory. Taking the top spot is a place that has become one of Scotland's most iconic seaside towns. Welcome to Tobermory, the colorful capital of the Isle of Mull. Few places are instantly recognizable. Tobermory is one of them. Its waterfront is lined with brightly painted buildings in shades of yellow, pink, blue, green, and red, creating one of the most photographed harbors in the United Kingdom. But behind those colorful facades lies a town that has remained remarkably faithful to its past. The harbor continues to welcome fishing boats, sailing yachts, and local ferries just as it has for generations. The narrow streets behind the waterfront are filled with independent shops, traditional pubs, family-owned cafes, and small galleries showcasing local artists. Unlike many modern tourist destinations, Tobermory has never allowed large-scale development to overwhelm its character. The buildings remain modest, the harbor remains active, and the community continues to celebrate its maritime heritage with genuine pride. Life here follows the rhythm of the sea. Boats arrive with the tide. Visitors stroll slowly along the waterfront. Children feed the ducks near the harbor. Musicians perform in local pubs during the evenings. As the sun begins to set, the colorful buildings reflect across the calm water, creating a scene so timeless that it feels almost untouched by the passing decades. It's not difficult to imagine standing here in 1964 and seeing nearly the same view. That remarkable sense of continuity makes Tobermory our number 1 choice. Not because it refuses to change, but because it has chosen to protect what matters most. Conclusion. These 10 seaside towns remind us that progress doesn't always mean replacing the past. Sometimes, preserving history creates something far more valuable. In a world filled with fast-paced cities, modern skylines, and constant change, these coastal communities offer something increasingly rare: a chance to slow down, to walk along centuries-old harbors, to meet people whose families have lived by the sea for generations, to enjoy places where tradition still shapes everyday life. Whether it's the colorful waterfront of Tobermory, the peaceful harbor of Crail, the dramatic cliffs of Pennan, or the timeless streets of Stonehaven, each town tells its own story. And together, they prove that some of Scotland's greatest treasures aren't castles or mountains. They're the small coastal communities where history is still alive. So, which of these seaside towns would you love to visit first? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey through Scotland's timeless coastline, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more hidden places, forgotten villages, and remarkable destinations from across the United Kingdom. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next event.